Hey everyone, welcome to West Coast Muscle Saws. A little late today, it should have been at 9 o'clock. I had a few other things to do. Anyway, I want to go over just some tools and different things today for you. I picked out some of the tools that I've used over the years, and we'll take a look at those and I'll explain a little bit about them. If you're interested in becoming a master technician, this is some of the tools that I used along my journeys to become one. And anyway, let me show you a few things. You won't see this tool very often. This was made back in the 70s, and a lot of the home light guys will recognize this. This is actually a see-through module that goes on the back of a 650, 750, 360 chainsaws, any of those with the two-piece, and this would go in the back, and your spark plug would be in here. You could actually, let me turn this guy off. You could actually bolt this on here, and if you seen fire to here, you knew that your module was working around the flywheel, and that's what its purpose was. It was very handy. Just take it off. Now, another way to check these, they taught us at the factory, and a lot of guys don't trust this, and just trust me, it works beautiful. Sounds scary, but it's not. Then again, I've got to put the statement out there. This is for entertainment only. Never try this stuff at home. Okay, there you go. You can actually, if you got a misfiring 650, 750, 360 with these modules on them, the way we were taught to test them is to take the original black one off, take the spark plug out, lick your two fingers or dip them in a little bit of moisture, and you're going to reach down there and you're going to touch those two prongs that these touch. This is what bumps up the volts. It's so low voltage, if you don't wet your fingers, you will not feel it. So you wet your two fingers, put them there, and it's got to be a pretty rapid pull on the starter of those big saws, the 360s as well. And you'll feel a very, very light tingle on your finger, telling you that the coil down by the flywheel is good or bad. Most all of those, these very rarely fail. The only time I've ever seen these fail, the black ones, was when this piece from months or years of running, vibration would break off the tang, or the inside spring in there would break, and yes, then you have to replace it. But we sold hundreds of those saws, and I never seen these fail. Now, going back to the coil on around the flywheel, not necessarily they were always bad when the saw was misfiring. The wiring would break from the vibration, of course, going onto the tangs, onto the coil. So you want to make sure you check those. Check the wires, pull against the tang, against the wire, see if there's any play. They were always breaking. And that's how you would test them. But if there was a piece that was going to go bad, and I had to guess at it, and the wires all checked out fine, and the wires that tuck underneath, they wrap around a little apparatus where this bolts up. If that all checks out good, then yeah, it's probably the module by the flywheel, which should be readily available as used. Finding a used chainsaw or something like that, and you should be able to pick one up. Anyway, it was a great tool. You just won't see these very often. Some of the home light guys will have it. Had a question here. Let me go over this right quick before I forget. Guys are wanting to get the wrap handlebar for the MS391, which they don't make, and you've got to buy this. I used to sell this kit. I sold hundreds of these kits, and it's OEM stuff. It's all steel. And what you need is to buy the kit. You can't just buy the handlebar, the wrap handlebar, and expect it to fit on. First, they don't even list one for it, but I was able to come up with one that worked fine. And I've got the part number for the kit, but you need all the hardware because you got to change mounts and different things. You got to change the deflectors, just a few things you got to change. And then also, if you want the West Coast spikes, I've got the part number for that. And any of the probably West Coast dealers that you get a hold of out here, even if you're back east, you can call a West Coast dealer. Most of them are real legit guys. And you can order these parts and they will send them to you. But don't make the mistake. I had a lot of guys wanting to buy just a handlebar. I can fix the rest of it. Trust me, you can't. It won't work. But with this hardware it comes with, and the kit, and it's all OEM. Now the spikes are the West Coast, we call them the West Coast muscle saw spikes. They're made by an outfit up here in the West Coast. Not me, but made by a guy. And they are just super hardened steel, beautiful falling spikes, and they're 5-point, and they are just dynamite. They're not those that you've seen on eBay, the made out of, I call it lead or whatever. You stick it in a log and move it a little bit, and your dog's kind of looks like that, all bent out of shape. These won't bend. They are very hard steel. Anyway, there's the part number right there. And there's the spike part number right there. And like I said, I don't recommend anyone, I'm not a dealer anymore, so I don't just recommend anyone, but if you will contact a steel dealer, West Coast, they usually stock all this stuff. East Coast guys, some of them stock it, but check with them and see. Howdy there, how you doing, Neil? How's things going out your way? If you want to pick up a set of that, that's how you do it. Really slick. A couple other tools. This tool is great. Now this is mainly, and I go back many years and working on chainsaws. Almost all your old chainsaws had keyways in the crankshaft, and so you would have to get that keyway out. Back then, you'd have to get it out, and today, if you want to, now this is again, never try this at home. This is just for entertainment only. This doesn't, not recommended. Advance the timing on your chainsaw. They are a little retarded. Hey, how you doing, Canadian? How you doing there? Hey, Robert, how are you? Anyway, you gotta get that keyway out to do any work on it. And I've seen guys take the screwdriver and you burr it up, ding it up, and do all kinds of different things to it and run it. Get you a pair of these. Get a quality pair. And you can see they got a very good, fine closing point there. And you can actually get in there and just gently pry that keyway out. And then you need to hold that keyway. What I made was a pair of very small vice grips. I don't have them right handy here. Let me look in the toolbox right quick. There might be here. Don't see them handy, guys. Anyway, they're a small set. Get a hold of that keyway and put the pliers in the, your vise is a good sturdy vise. So this is another tool I use. I'll talk about it later. Anyway, get the keyway in there, and then you can take a jeweler's file, and you can file that keyway and advance that. You don't need to file the slots out on the ignition. I never was a fan of that. They're so, you get them so oblong, you're not getting close like you should. And they also taught us at the factory, if those tolerances are not perfect on that coil against the flywheel, let me see here. Let me show you here. I'm not much of an artist, but anyway, flywheel, modular coil, magnets. When you set the timing, or when you're setting the clearance between the flywheel and the coil, you always want to make sure you get that magnet, and there's a counterbalance on most of them, and it's non-magnetic. You can tell by putting your screwdriver against it. You want to put that against the coil and loosen the two screws and let it suck up. And there are a couple of different specs. Hey Robert, northern Canada border, near New York. How's things up your way? Hopefully you're not getting snowed in up there. We've got prediction of a little bit of weather. What you got to do is to set that feeder gauge, and you go to the Snap-on truck or different places, and they make long. You don't have to use that one with 10 or 15 or 20 a minute. Get you a couple of long ones. Some of the saw manufacturers are actually sending out the actual gauge in like a plastic little card form. Some guys use business cards. I don't know how accurate that is, but you know. Anyway, the closer you set it, and you can't advance the timing. So if you get that off a little bit and you're too wide, you could have some run issues. You probably wouldn't notice cutting some firewood, but if you were doing some performance cutting, it might mean a half a second or a second or so. Anyway, great tool. This is what they used back when they were racing the go-kart engines. These are readily available from McCullough and different places because they were very hard to time. Snow coming right tonight. Wisconsin. Wow. Wow, we guys. Well, here in Oregon, oh, thank you, Robert. Here in Oregon, we are very blessed. We only have rain in the wintertime. Wintertime only lasts 13 months out of the year. Anyway. We've had a little drought out here. You can see that on the news or whatever. Anyway, this was very popular when you're racing McCulloch kart engines, and they're very hard to time. But this tool, you can see it up there, we get it just right. You would take the flywheel off and you would use this, and it's got a little pointer. Just a really slick little tool for timing your vintage McCullochs. I know a lot of guys still rebuild those and they use the 101B in the chainsaw engines. That's kind of a fun thing to do and really run good. Anyway, and we talked about this tool. What do you do when the inlet needle seat on your Tillotson or Walboro or Zama or any of those goes bad, and you get your otoscope? I don't know if you guys are using an otoscope. I use one. It's a little scope. You can light on it and you can look in there. Doctors use them. They look inside your ears and different things, up your nose. But anyway, I'll do that. I'll get some more saw pictures. The guys have sent me some pictures, and anybody out there that wants to get their saws on here, I love to show off the saws. The guys have got some of the coolest saws you've ever seen. I love that. The inlet needle seat will pit a little bit, and of course the inlet needle, you put a new one in there and it works great for, you know, the first few fire-ups, and all of a sudden you're weeping again and hard start and flooding, and we've talked about that. Well, they did, the Tillotson and Walboro did make a tool, and I've got one, and it's a coining tool is what they call it, and if you're into hydraulics, you know what I'm talking about. You actually use a ball bearing in some of the hydraulics, and you actually put a brass drift on top of it, and believe it or not, ping. You got that tool, Brian? All right, awesome. Brian's got one of those tools, this guy right here. That's cool. Boy, not much of that stuff around anymore. I do have a book. If I get some time, I'll show you. I got a book with a bunch of the tools in it. Of course, you can't order it anymore, but it's Hortzman and different things where they had tools. Great stuff. Anyway, the coining tool, I used one and loved it, but there was some kind of an issue with guys not using it properly. I don't know, it was liability or just damaged carburetors and whatever. Anyway, I don't know if you can find anybody that makes these, but this was the ticket. Let me show you, get up close there. You can see it right there. See that? That's a coining tool. And it fit in there just perfectly, and you would set it in there, and then you would peen it, and then you would turn a little peen it, and it would seat that inlet needle seat. Perfect. Just a beautiful tool. But if you didn't get it dead on, of course, you can see where you can have some issues with that little tit on it there. Great tool. I never use mine anymore just for show and tell, but you know, I've tried to clean up those seats, like we talked about. Best thing I ever found was using a soda blaster, Harbor Freight. You know, I used to really say those tools are junk, but, and I know they're made somewhere else, but some of the stuff's okay, other stuff's not. But I bought mine there years ago, it's a soda blaster. You can buy the material blow through it. And it actually worked pretty good. I'm really pleased with how I could clean that seat up enough to where it would seal, especially on the carbs you cannot get parts for. This is for the lawnmower guys. They taught us at Briggs and Stratton at the Master Service Technician School back in Wisconsin there. Too many guys were sticking screws into the black fuel lines, you know those. Let me show you here. Like I said, I'm not an artist, but we'll try here. The black fuel lines, and all your Briggses and everything, if you're using the OEM stuff, has a liner inside it. And guys were taking just head bolts and whatnot, screws, and when they would, rather than drain the fuel, which I agree, you know, it's a lot easier to put something up in there to stop the fuel flow while you're working on the carburetor. They would run that screw up there, and what they were doing is picking up particles, and when they screwed it in and unscrewed it and hooked it back up, and they just cleaned that carburetor, all clean and everything, carburetor nice and clean here. Hooked that up to the nipple there, and voila, plugged again. So, Brad Radcliffe came up with this, and then of course other guys use it. It's very popular stuff, cheap. You can also buy the squeeze-off tools. Get you a pair of those vice grips, channel locks, whatever you guys call Get you a couple of pieces of that rubber hose, black rubber hose, slip on there. Squeeze that off perfect. I've used it on chainsaws, works pretty good. It squeezes it down tight enough. I also prefer to use these. Of course, get some quality ones. Gently pinch off the fuel line. You can actually put you a piece of the little fuel yellow. I don't like the yellow fuel line, or the black. I prefer the OEM black fuel line for the chainsaws, the one you get from the OEM guys. Tell you the truth. Anyway, put that up, slide it on there, and you get your nice little squeeze off, and it doesn't damage it. I've talked to many guys about this yellow fuel line. Don't use it. You know, they say it works, and I tried it. I'll sell it. I tell customers when I was working in the store, I would say, you know, if you don't want to get the OEM stuff, you're looking at saving $1, you know, we'll sell it to you, whatever. But it is not good quality. Not. It stiffens up. It's just constantly causing problems. And like I said, I bought it from my quality distributors, and oh yeah, they said it really works good. The OEM fuel line would seem to last 2 or 3 years under all kinds of fuel conditions, and the yellow, you were lucky to get a season before it would harden up. Another thing you got to realize, let me tell you what I don't like about that yellow line. A lot of guys don't realize, they may not get into the chainsaw fuel tanks. Almost all your Huskies, and Steel does this too, they do it a different technique. All your Husky lines are curly-cued, kind of like that, with a fuel filter. And of course this hooks up to your carburetor. Well, there's a reason behind that. You know, these chainsaws, if that fuel filter's in this tank, and it's not floating around there, let me draw a better picture of that. Actually, the tank sets up like that, whatever. It needs to, when you flip the saw over, that fuel filter needs to come over to this side of the tank if you're going that direction, or if you got the saw flipped around there, it needs to go over here. That fuel line, yellow, would get a little stiff, and it just in there in your tank like that, inside your tank with the fuel filter on it. You tilt the saw over, and you got about 1/4 of a tank of fuel left. It won't follow over there, and pretty soon you've got a similar to an air leak. You're sucking less fuel and more air, and all of a sudden the RPMs go up. Now, if you're working your saw, dull chain and everything, you can see what would happen if this stayed here and your fuel was over here, and it wasn't in the fuel. You'd have a problem. With the Husqvarna fuel line, it follows around that tank, and I use it in all the trimmers, anything I worked on, the commercial trimmers, whenever I could, I would use that line. And I would have less problems with the commercial guys coming in, chasing ghosts, telling me their saw would run lean when actually it's running good. If you hold it up right on the shop bench, it's running good. But if you were actually out there cutting like they were, and they're flipping it around, they got the trimmer over their head doing their edging and stuff, it would run lean. Well, you can't duplicate that in the shop if you're not out there edging. Anyway, we finally figured that one out, and so anyway, that's why I don't use it. And not that I disdain the yellow line. A lot of guys think I just hate it or whatever. Well, if they made a really durable curly one that would actually replace the Husqvarna one, I would say go ahead. But until they do that, I would not chance my very expensive Husqvarna chainsaw doing that. Here's another great tool if you if you're cleaning, you know, you never should probe too deep in some of the passages. I understand that on carburetors. You change the structure of them a little bit, and there's some run issues. But if you're dealing with some vintage chainsaws and you've got some coagulation, I call it, or some of that powdery white stuff in some of the passages, and you're trying to clean it out and stuff, I found that the tool that they do root canals with, dentists do root canals with this tool. And whenever they throw them away, you discard them after every use, of course. It's got a burr on it, and you can actually reach in there and clean. There's different sizes. It works wonderful. Like I said, you can probably buy these new online. I don't know. I just knew a dentist friend. He kept me well supplied with these. And I was it's one of those tools, 101 uses for. You could just clean different things and fix. And actually, you can actually file with these. It's got like almost feels like a burr of a file. Actually actually use that for cleaning out, opening up little passages, passageway on your different things you're working on. We've talked about these. Boy, it's a hit and miss, good and bad. You can wipe out a chainsaw with it. What it is, a piston stop. Every manufacturer's got one. There's metal ones, aluminum ones, different kinds of them. I still use the rope probably more than any. I like using the rope. Just a looper rope, big old looper rope. Number 5. Number 5 loop. Number 5 loop stuck in the spark plug hole with the piston all the way down. And then rotate it, try to keep it above the ports when you put it in there. And then bring, of course you know how they got the design top of the cylinder here. And bring that piston up and with the rope up a little bit, and it should stop right up there. Don't use an impact, just use hand tools. A lot of the bolts are reverse threads, you realize that. And gently take it apart. You can do more damage that you don't want, and we don't need to do that. Great tools, then again, and steel, there's a part number. Very good tool. I don't have much luck with the aftermarket torque wrenches. That's good quality, and I like the reach. Get in there deep. And of course, you can get these anywhere. I did find the best probably Snap-on. I know they're super expensive, but when you got a saw that you're working on and you're really ripping on that, reefing on it, you don't want that to break off into your hand. I've had it happen before in the cheap ones, and it's not a good ending to that, let me tell you. Spark plug chaser. Every toolbox should have that. Anytime you feel the spark plug's not going in nice and smooth, pick you up one of these. This is the 2 sizes. And a little grease in the flutes. Go in there and clean those threads up. You don't have to take the cylinder off if it's aluminum head. Cleans up nicely. Saves out that spark plug hole. This is for the guys working on the old saws. You know, we go back, way back on the breaker points. This tool has just saved me I don't know how much time. And the way I used to be able to buy these all the time, but I couldn't, my source couldn't get them anymore. And what it is a flex stone. And the way I found it, and you guys get online, it's the guys that work on the, Robert, get you some quality tools there. Good idea. I'm fully behind that. I don't like wasting money on tools that I don't need, but there's certain tools that I use that I needed those day in, day out. I mean, you've got to have them working. You can't be working on a saw and have them go down. I usually had duplicates of everything, 2 or 3 as a matter of fact, because when one would break, I couldn't stop working on saws or whatever I was working on just to wait for tools. It's a flex stone. You've got to use a certain type of material when you're cleaning points. You cannot use the black sandpaper that you can buy at the hardware. If you're going to go that route, use the brown. The black will short out and arc those points. I learned that at the factory. They demonstrated how it worked back in the day. Anyway, the guys on the pinball machines, they use these when on the old vintage pinballs, they use a breaker system. And this is how they clean those breakers, and they can do it several times. And you can I've actually cleaned up some points that were just at an angle. Let me show you here. You know how the guys that work on the breaker points, you've got 2 surfaces when they close. And they open and close, open and close. Well, I actually have had them where this is open and closed so many millions of times that they're actually got a curvature to them. They're burnt, clear back like that. They're burnt back. And you can actually go in there, clean those up with a flex stone. I've used jeweler's files as well. And you will not believe how good you can make those points work again, especially on your vintage saws that you cannot get breaker points for. And probably the last thing we'll talk about, and I think everybody should have one of these if you're doing any chainsaw work. The thermometer reads out the temperature when you're heating and installing bearings, heating the crankcases up. Just a good thing to have. Good thing to have. Well, guys, I'm going to wind it down. I got to go do some stuff, and I'd like for you to, if you got your 800 Pro Mac, can you get a little heat on those bolts where they're in there? He's talking about some of the bolts going into the magnesium crankcase, I think, are on the top covers. You can take a little butane torch, and I've got one here somewhere. I'll have to dig it out. One of those you can get, and you flip it upside down and load it with the propane and light it. They use them in the for cooking and different things. They're very popular on the Snap-on truck. I've seen them on there. Anyway, I've been able to heat that magnesium just enough without distorting any of the plastic or anything, and then get on it with a sometimes it's a little impact driver. You know, those twist ones, just pop. Don't get carried away. Sometimes it's enough. I've had to talk to my customers many times on the cylinder covers and say, hey, I've got to heat that up. I'm going to distort that plastic. Are you okay with that? And if they're okay with that, then you can usually heat that up, and that screw will just back right out. Heat is the greatest tool there ever was on that magnesium. All right, guys. We will talk to you guys later. I'm going to shut this down. You betcha, Neil. We'll be talking to you later.